And we're live. Woohoo!
Hi.
Hi.
It's so early here, but I just found out that Vivika, I'm saying your name correct? Is it Vivika?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Is from Scotland, which is exciting to me. So welcome. Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's a usual thing. Wherever somebody's from somewhere different to you, you're always excited, but it's kind of like, to me, it's less exciting because it's not as far away from me as it is from you. But
I know.
anyway, enough of us talking about ourselves and our own geographical advantages or disadvantages. Let's talk to Vivika. So, I'm just going to repeat the questions I asked in the pre-chat, really. But like, you are an author, and
Yep.
you are somebody who works for. You founded this. You found this charity called Ragdolls about Turner syndrome.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So just describe a bit about like the kind of books you've written, how many books you've written, and talk a little bit about the charity side of things as well.
Well, first wrote a book in 2013. I think that was the first title that I had. It was a horror book called Red Snow. Since then, I've had 9 different novels, and they've all been thrillers. And most recently, the last 3 or 4 have been thrillers, which include graphics. You could call them graphic novels, but I tend not to because it's not a comic book as such. It's just a novel with graphics. But it is essentially a graphic novels, and the wonderful artwork comes from Leo St. Paul. He creates that for me. He reads what I have, and he really builds the scenes. So it's exciting to come and see it all on screen like that. The charity Ragdolls, founded in 2013, it supports women and girls with a condition called Turner syndrome. The reason I set that up is because I myself am a Turner syndrome girl, and when I was growing up, I never really met many other girls with the same condition. It's said that it occurs in about 2,000 and 2,500 girls' live births across the globe. So it's not particularly common, but we at Ragdolls are trying to raise awareness of what this condition is, and as science progresses, trying to bring as much up-to-date information as we can, and any support that we can offer the girls in that respect is the better, obviously. So another one of the reasons why I felt that it was needed is because one of the first news interviews that I did, after I was talking about Turner syndrome, and afterwards a woman got in touch with me, and she said that her girl had Turner syndrome as well. And like me, her girl had never met anyone else with the condition, and she was just so grateful that there's someone else out there speaking about it. So it was at that point I was like, I'm on the right track. I know what I'm doing. This is definitely something that's important. So we've been working at that, and all the books that I write go towards supporting that, and finances and publications and promotions and things like that as well. So it's a big task, but me and the lovely people that support us at Ragdolls are up for it. So
That's beautiful. So it's called Ragdolls UK. Is that what I saw?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so if people were to look up Ragdolls UK, they could Google that and find your charity. Is that correct? Okay.
That's right. Yeah, the website is ragdollsuk.com. So if anyone were to go on there, they would be able to see the projects that we have coming, or mission statements, and some blogs, and some of the experiences from some of the girls as well. Some of them are really, really beautifully written blogs that we have on there to help other girls understand their own condition and give an outlet for them as well. So
Wonderful. I'm curious about your charity. So how it's to raise awareness, and how do you do this? Through the blog, and what other outlets do you use?
well, our main outlets are through social media campaigns, and because unfortunately with COVID and affecting everybody, we've had to be mostly based online. But the beautiful thing is that in this day and age, you can connect globally with so many different people. I mean, here we are right now as well, having a chat from various different places. So having that at our disposal has made things much, much easier, and we're looking to build on that in the future and get the word out there to reach more people that might need our help or might not have heard of the condition.
So, well, that's like, I shouldn't have asked you the double-headed question talking about thrillers and the thing, but let's stay on to Turner syndrome at the moment. So, like, what are the symptoms of Turner syndrome? And like, if is it something that's often misdiagnosed? Because it sounds like it's pretty rare.
It can be. There are different varieties. It's like a spectrum in a sense, where it shows on people in various different ways. I myself are what is called mosaic, which means that some of the symptoms or a lot of the symptoms don't show quite as prominently as they would on some of the other girls. The symptoms include short stature, and my brothers are all over 6 foot, and there's me at just over 5. So the cartilage in the arms can be slightly different. A webbed neck as well is common. The main focus is some of the health conditions that can come with it. There is a high risk of aortic dissection in girls with Turner syndrome, so keeping a close eye on the heart is important. Also, the kidneys and various things like that. So it does show differently. And there have been a lot of girls that aren't diagnosed until later in life after puberty, because usually that's when it starts to tell if puberty doesn't happen as it would normally, as they say. When I was younger, I used to take part in the doctor's exams as one of their patients, and they used me because I kind of baffled the doctors quite a lot. It took them a wee while to figure out what it was that there was meant to be wrong with me, going by the symptoms that they were getting given. So that's another reason why awareness is important, because even some physicians, they get taught very little on the subject, and it just comes from extra reading after that. So that's why we want to raise the awareness in the first place.
And you do fundraisers as well?
Yes, we do. We are actually going to be having a play performed in Scotland later in the year, details of which we'll start releasing on the website. We're looking forward to that, and it'll be a fun play, a family play, and we're hoping that will both raise awareness and raise some funds as well. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, let us know. You never know, I might be in the area at just the right time. So let us know.
Hartlepool is not in Scotland, Krista.
we can get there, right? Is that
well, you can actually. Yeah, it's not that bad, I think. Right, so let's give you a chance to hawk your wares and talk about your thrillers. From the pre-chat, it sounded like your first book wasn't a thriller. So how did you end up A, realizing that you wanted to write thrillers, and B, that you were good at writing thrillers? Hopefully you're good at writing thrillers.
Well, when I first wrote Red Snow, as I said, I was a huge fan of the horror genre. I still am. I do love horror books. I do love horror movies and all that kind of thing. But when I started looking at the world around me, I began to realize that monsters and nasty things can be very real and
Yeah.
sometimes having a look at those very real monsters is more interesting to a certain extent as a writer, and it gives you a lot more to explore in the human psyche, really. Because the characters that I prefer to portray, or I mostly portray, are always sort of shades of grey. You
Yeah.
will get ones that are out and out, villains, but it's always fun to play with people who change their minds about things,
Yeah.
or might be a bit more morally ambiguous. So playing with the real world, or real characters or real people was a lot more fun in that sense. So it's kind of why I stuck to that and enjoyed that and started building on that.
I'm so curious about creating a story that is a thriller and going. So when you say thriller, does that include horror, or does that?
Well,
horror
so some of my readers would argue that they can be horrific.
Okay.
It can have horror elements, but it is essentially a thriller.
Okay.
Or essentially thrillers that I write. But yeah, the horror elements get brought into it. Dream sequences can bring out some of the strangest things, and things like that. So yeah, I still bring it into it, and I still enjoy exploring horror. So who knows what might come in the future.
How do you get into the mind of your characters? What inspires you to write thriller type stories?
Well, I read a lot of thrillers myself, and I watch a lot of true crime documentaries. And as I say, that's one of the kind of key elements where you realise just how bad people can be. And as I say, I was actually, my 10-year-old niece, I was trying to explain this to her a few weeks back. I says, yes, it's horrible things that I write, and well, obviously she's not read it. Her parents would kill me, but I said, yes, it's horrible elements that I write, but you need to be able to dissociate yourself from, what's real and what's fiction. I like to push the boundaries of fiction, but again, you need to remember that, real life is different. But so when I get into the frame of mind, just try and go as dark as I can without losing myself. Just see what makes these different characters tick, what makes their fears, what makes their ambitions, what makes them want to behave the way that they behave. It's going through the psychology of it is the most exciting part for me, when you're building the characters and building the story around them and what's happening to them.
So if you had to, I mean, well, I was going to ask you just a general question about setting, but actually, I think I'll ask you a wider question, which is like, if you had to describe your books as closely as possible by referring to either well-known TV shows or well-known books, what would kind of be the most similar to your thrillers? Are they all one series, or are they different sort of standalone books?
They are all standalone books, but
Yeah.
they're all set in the same city. And some of the stories do interconnect in various ways. So you can read them in any particular order. But if you read them all in chronological order, it builds a bigger picture of things that are happening in this particular city. Colford City is what it's called. But in terms of comparing, I'm not sure, because there's various elements in it. Because I'm actually just reading the series of unfortunate events at this moment with Lemony Snicket, and as I'm reading it, it's like, oh, I remember just how much I was inspired by those stories. And obviously I'm a huge fan of the classics as well. Dickens is one of my favourites. You wouldn't think it, but there's some elements of the kind of storytelling in there that I enjoy. But to pick one particular series, not sure, to be honest. I guess the readers would need to find that out for themselves.
Yeah. Okay, so to create your stories, do you write out each character individually? Do you put down on paper, this is what their personality is going to be, this is where I'm going to go with this, or do you create the story all at once, page by page?
I usually take notes on what's going to happen in each chapter. I usually have a layout written out so that I can follow it. That way it would be easier than if I've jumped a couple of scenes, I can go back and check and see, oh, that's not how they would react because this happened or such and such. But I usually handwrite all my novels first, which is hugely time consuming, but it's always been my method, and it's something I've always enjoyed. Usually I'm sitting with a notebook on my lap and I'm sitting scribbling away. But in terms of noting it out, as I says, it's usually just a kind of scene by scene what's going to happen. And the characters, usually I just let them develop themselves and bring themselves into the story from my head onto the page. Really, music is a huge contributing factor to that as well, because I listen to various different music, you know, cheesy pop, rock music, all kinds, and they can inspire how a person would behave or how a scene should feel. And so that's usually my big go-to thing.
Do you surprise yourself with the endings sometimes?
I was actually just having a discussion with this with my brother and my sister-in-law, because quite recently they've been reading some manuscripts, and when I'm writing it, it's obviously I'm in the moment, I'm writing the scene, but it's not until I read it to someone else or they read it, you realise, oh, that's very violent, or oh, that's not quite as bad as I thought it was going to be, or oh god, that's worse. So that's why beta readers are really important as well. They give you a good idea on how people would react to certain things.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go. How do you market your books? Because that's the thing that most I suspect there will be people around who are, or there's lots of people, authors and self-published authors or traditionally published authors, who have real struggles selling their books. So what are your tips for? I think Christelle at some point may actually have a children's book out. So what are your general tips, and what are your specific tips for thriller writers in terms of trying to sell your books and market them and get them out there?
There are various different companies out there that will help start-up authors, or even authors that are trying to take on a new marketing campaign. I haven't used any of those, not for any particular reason. It's just that it's just not something that I've came to. But they are important to some self-published authors, and again, as you said, traditionally published ones. Then they'll help out with campaigns. Like the situation with Ragdolls, being an author these days, you have all the social media, you have the whole internet at your disposal, which essentially opens you up to the world. And making the most of that is the best thing possible. Really, my own strategy is I just go on, chat to people, and see how they get from the way that I would talk, or the kind of whatever I say, they would get, oh, that's obviously what you would expect from the books. That's why I try my very hardest not to swear, try not to have a foul mouth. But you just chat to people and get their likes, dislikes, and discuss books with them. See, because most authors are big readers themselves, so there's huge groups out there that you can discuss other books and things like that, and everybody will be happy to share their knowledge and have a look at what you have as well. It's just making contacts, making friends, really. That's the main important thing I could suggest.
Do you do book signings, and do you do public readings of your books at all?
I do indeed, yeah. Again, unfortunately, because of COVID, I've not had the chance to do anything like that recently. But now that things are hopefully getting back to normality, I'll be through in Edinburgh to a couple of the independent bookshops, through there, who stock some of my books, and I'll be doing some readings and signings there as well. Later in the year, I'll be doing some live readings online from my new book. When that comes out, The Boss, I'll be doing some extracts from that as well. So again, making the most of the internet.
So let's talk about your new book that's coming out there, The Boss. Sounds a really important title. Can you give us the non-spoiler version of what happens in it? So, like, what will be the blurb on the back of it, kind of,
well,
in basic terms?
The boss is a nickname for Colford Correctional. It's the prison inside this city. And the key element is that for the previous books, you've seen how bad or how nasty some of the people in this city can be towards each other. And now we're verging into looking at the worst of the worst that this city has to show the people that are actually locked up behind bars. They will focus on 4 of the inmates as they try and survive their sentences as the situation around the prison and the control of the prison changes, and we'll see what complications come from that.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this because I saw you wrote about this somewhere. Maybe it was on your Facebook or somewhere. I saw these characters written about. How do you, I'm assuming you haven't been to prison, how do you get inspired to write these characters, living in prison?
I hope you didn't do the method acting thing and went and
yeah, is there method acting? Maybe you did. Did you go visit?
No, it hasn't, not any of it coming from personal experience. But I have spoken to a couple of previous inmates, people who had been in prison, just to get some rough idea of what the life was like. Then, of course, in true author fashion, you take that, you exaggerate it, and you make it a whole lot worse to make sure that this place is an absolute hellhole compared to what the hellhole that they were already in. So, you take advice from people that are in the know. Like, for instance, in one of my earlier novels, Maestro, there is a young child in it. And at the time, my niece was, I don't think she had been even born at the time, or she would have been very, very young. But I wanted to get some advice on how this child would interact. What kind of words would they use for various things? So I spoke to some of the girls that I went to school with who all had kids around about the age, and so that I could get it as true to life as possible whilst being fiction. So it's been the same with the boss, as I said, getting advice from some people who have experienced it, and just taking it from there, really, and making it the story that it is.
Okay, so how can people find out about you, your books, and Ragdolls UK?
Well, you can visit my website. That's www.vivikawidow.com. I think I'm showing my age by adding the www at the end of it, but vivikawidow.com, and Ragdoll's website is there as well. All the information, up-to-date information, will be on there. So if people were willing to check that out, that would be awesome. Look forward to having them and hearing their thoughts.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for being on the show, and you can hang around until the after the show. I think Christelle's got to rush off to do something with rich people, apparently. So I think like babysitting or something along those lines. It's not like she's not become some sort of high class person. So.
You know what, Tim? It's top secret.
Yeah. Anyway, on that note, it was great to have you on the show today, and I'm going to I like, this is one of these long running jokes. Actually, I'm terrible at doing the end of shows. I never know how to end the show, but yes, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody.
We'll say goodbye. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was nice to meet you.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.